Join the Classic Game Room community to get your questions answered on Thursday CGR Q&A. The following review has been approved by Lord Carnage and the best of Classic Game Room. Welcome to Classic Game Room. I remember this from the arcades when you would sit inside an X-Wing fighter cockpit or something, but here it is on the Atari 2600. It's Star Wars, the arcade game. John Williams' classic Star Wars theme has never sounded better than it does on Atari 2600. That's not true. It sounds better on Laserdisc, but check this out. Here we have Star Wars, the arcade game on Atari 2600 from 1983. And this was a pretty memorable arcade game from back in the day because it had a cockpit. Also, it was like a giant Vectrex. It used vector graphics in a pretty unique way to recreate TIE fighters and the trench scene and the Death Star and all that great stuff from Star Wars. So there's really no way the Atari 2600 version is going to top that, and it doesn't, but I'll give the developers some credit. They did a good job using what they had. The trench scene without music just isn't quite the same. Here's the part where you're supposed to use the Force and bullseye that Death Star, not like you're shooting Womp Rats, but like you're shooting Jar Jar in the head with a sniper rifle. Shoot him twice just to be sure. Yeah, but don't celebrate too soon because the Empire builds another Death Star and then another one after that. And they keep building Death Stars for as long as you're going to play the game. I don't think there's an ending. It gets really hard after a while, especially the trench scene. Now, it's been a long time since I've played the arcade version, but what you do in this one is move the cursor around the screen and shoot TIE fighters in those fireballs. And while this may not be apparent from the video, it's not terribly responsive and you can't shoot very quickly. It's actually quite difficult to control. The game looks better than it plays. Especially during the flight scenes, you can kind of fly your X-Wing fighter around while also aiming. Doesn't work terribly well. There's a bunch of Star Wars themed games on the Atari 2600 and they run from really good like the Empire Strikes Back game where you're shooting AT-ATs to downright terrible like the Jedi Arena game. This one is right in the middle. It's not great, but it's not awful either. In fact, I think it's pretty impressive considering it's an Atari 2600 flight game, but, there really aren't very many good flight games on Atari 2600. This part's tough. You need to use the Force to get through those laser gates, I think. You need the music for this game. Come on. If only I had one of maybe 30 copies of the soundtrack somewhere. Which is obvious sarcasm. I've actually got the disco remix of the Lapti-Nek theme from Return of the Jedi on vinyl. It's incredible. The Force is strong with this one, and by this I mean me. Ooh. You can play that in the background while you're rocking the Atari. And hey, guess what? I've got a Classic Game Room shout-out. And thank you to send to my man Mark and his wife Suzanne in Fresh Meadows, New York. Thank you for sending Star Wars, the arcade game. Yes! The Empire is safe! Wait. I'm on the other side. It's good. It's not as good as the one where you shoot AT-ATs, but few games are. There's obviously better Star Wars flight games these days, like the X-Wing series, even Battlefront, but for a 1983 release on the 2600, this is impressive. I sense a great disturbance in the Atari. It looks pretty good. The Atari Star Wars songs aren't too bad. Sadly, the controls are sloppy, but at least it doesn't say Episode 4 on it. That's always driven me crazy. Yes! Woo! That's my high score! It's the first one. It should be number 1. Never mind. Don't get me started. This one is pretty cheap and easy to collect. It's kind of fun, but really, if you want to experience the Death Star battle, you've got to find the arcade game, the actual vector graphics, old school arcade game. I haven't seen it in like 30 years. I found some pictures on the internet, and yeah, it looks pretty much like I remember. It looks awesome. Not a bad game, but this one doesn't quite go all the way in. It impacts on the surface. Oh, snap. You want to go all the way in, and then blow up the Death Star. Then you may as well throw Jar Jar Binks into the Sarlacc pit along with some Sharkticons, just to make sure he doesn't get out of that alive. Yeah! Woo! Victory! Victory! The Empire is defeated forever until the next level. There they are again. The Best of Classic Game Room is now on DVD, Blu-ray, and Hyper Laser Vision album set.